Okay. So hello, everyone, to this short presentation on social innovation and social and transformative innovation and the potential that it has in the global maker communities. What is social innovation, actually? I mean, it's been used a lot. Everybody's talking about it recently, but then there are different definitions. So one of the definitions that we use at the Center for Social Innovation here in Vienna, where I'm working at, is that social innovations are novel and more effective practices that prove capable to tackle societal issues and are adopted and successfully utilized by individuals, groups, and organizations concerned. So you will hear about that more often, but for us, it's really important that these innovations are also adopted and really used in practice, so we don't stay at the theoretical level. Bit more details. What kind of elements would you expect that social innovation should have? So this is adapted from a previous project on social innovation where they define some core elements that should be present such that it meets a social need. It has some kind of novelty. We'll see that a bit more in detail. It goes from idea to implementation. It enhances society's capacity to act. And it's effective. So as I said before, the effectiveness and being implemented is a strong aspect, actually. And then there are other common elements that are often present, but not necessarily, not as the core elements, but often, we talk about open and collaborative ways of doing things, or also that it is a better use of assets and resources. It's cross-sectoral. I'll go into a bit more detail on that as well. But as said, this is not always, but often common features that we see in these social innovations. So if we look a bit more into these core elements of social innovation, what are they? We said that it meets a social need. So it's important that it's contextualized and that it starts from a real social need. So it's needs-based. For example, a certain group in society has a certain need, like its lack of income, certain educational challenges, food, transport, whatever. Then the novelty itself, as we said, it doesn't have to be super innovative. It can also be something that it's brought from a different field to a new sector. So we don't talk only about radical innovations here, but it could be, of course, it's often new practices. That's what it is. As we said, it can also be applied coming from somewhere else and being then applied in a different sector. It's practice-led, so as said before, it's from ideas to implementation. It emerges really from people doing things. It doesn't stay at the ideation phase, but it's really implemented, and it brings forward practical implications, and that then really have effect on people's lives. It enhances society's capacity to act. So the process is an important goal or outcome, so to say, that it also creates a new awareness or skills, capacities, knowledge, relationships, etc. And also important that it's effective, that the solution exists and is effectively implemented, and it can be measurable improvements, for example, for the target groups that they bring forward the social innovations. The other common features, what do we mean here? So, for example, that it's cross-sectoral. Very often it is it includes public and the private sector, or non-formal and in informal settings, for example, non-profit organizations, so civic society, for example, and it touches actors across different sectors. It's open and collaborative often, so for example, the actors are, we often see inclusive visions there in these processes, also grassroots and bottom up. So it doesn't start, top down, but often bottom up, and it starts from a smaller movement, for example, that is then also being scaled out. Or presumption and co-production is an element that we see very often. For example, I would see a good example there would be, for example, the repair cafes, where, the beneficiaries aren't just passive, but they are also active in the sense of, yeah, contributing also to it. And the other aspects, common features that we see is this mutualism. So it's also, you know, individual and collective well-being obtained by mutual dependencies. For example, in the home sharing, we see that, or in co-ops. New roles and responsibilities, new governance models, for example, new collaborative actions. One example there we've seen is, for example, this Fix My Street, or you know, these kind of communities. Better use of assets and resources, for example, underused assets, or in the microfinancing, and it develops assets and capabilities. For example, there's also many, I guess you're all aware of these examples, but where also there is agency being built, and trainings are also included, and empowerment, and these kind of elements. Oops. There are also, if we approach it from a slightly different angle, not in terms of the features, but there are also typologies of social innovation, where they could be a new product, like assistive technologies I've seen, for example, you know, with Carables, new services, new processes. It can be new markets, can be new platforms, which we have seen a lot in the recent years also. New organizational forms, for example, as the hub network, or this community interest companies. Can be new business models also. I mean, and I think, for example, there are also, I mean, in many of the aspects, I think we can, with Make, we can contribute a lot in various of these aspects. But it could also be, for example, new infrastructures, or new institutions even. Then just a little bit, a clear little glimpse into, you know, these dimensions of social innovation. So it's important, and I stress that a lot, that it starts, you know, from the social need, but this is often at the micro level. And then if we go already to the meso level, it can already address societal, or bring forward societal challenges. So it grows from the micro to the meso level. And at macro level, we would already see systemic change being implemented. So real, even, you know, if we see then, for example, that we would have, new legislation that would become then implemented. So that's really at the highest level of systemic change, where social innovations move along this, you know, this micro, meso, and macro level. A little bit of a different way of showing this is kind of in this kind of representation, where you would start from an idea, or for a prompt, you would start, you know, with getting some ideations and proposals. You would do some prototyping, and then the next phase would be the sustaining, and then you would scale it and reach this systemic change. But this is really a longer process. And it's often not, although it's like a snail, and it's really not similar. So I think this other presentation also shows it nicely. This is from some other colleagues here at the Center for Social Innovation, where they on the one hand say who has agency in the social innovation process, which are the relationships, the resources, and reflexivity. And in the social innovation process, you see here that it's quite, you know, chaotic, or at least going back and forth in cycles. So it's not something super linear, but it's often also having feedback loops, iterations, and learnings to go from a first idea to an implementation, to an embedding, and then to creating this impact, and an even impact at systemic level. So I just really like this image of showing that it's not doesn't go straight away from micro, meso, macro, but it's actually a quite complex process with a lot of learning involved in it. And then another term that's related to it, or that came up recently more and more as well, and is the transformative innovation. And there is this one network by the United Nations on the Transformative Innovation Network, where they defined transformative innovations as an umbrella term for radical or disruptive innovations, which through technologies, ideas, business models and partnerships arrangements bring about fundamental changes to the way we consume or produce, creating social value. So this means that I think there are lots of parallels in social innovation and transformative innovation, but transformative innovation has often very much the focus at really shaking at systemic level. So from the beginning, it's not so much the micro level of individuals, but it's from the very beginning, it has in mind very much a social and societal and systemic change. And therefore, there's also some transformative innovation policies where, say, the societal impact or the systemic approach is in the focus there. So they already started different thinking than what we do with ours, often in projects with our small scale trials. So here it's really already thinking big, like what do you want to shake up, what kind of socio-technical systems changes you want to achieve. They have more like our, like in the long run, changing, for example, from this local manufacturing, from global to local manufacturing. I think that's something that really has the potential to be a transformative innovation and really shake up, also have a change, a systemic change. It has a long-term vision often. Of course, it engages multi-actors in the collaboration, is also experimental, but always thinking, as I said, more already at the macro level. Brings in diverse perspectives as well. And in that sense, it's also intersectional. I would say equity and inclusion is often an important point there. And of course, it's also, they also feed with the learning process and adaptations as they go along. So for us, I think it would be interesting to connect, for example, also to this Transformative Innovation African Hub, which they have established out of a bigger consortium also. And I think that some of the work we're doing would be also great to relate to them. And as we have the policy work package in MAKE, it's definitely something to relate to. Just a few examples then now. So in the MAKE, for example, I think from what I said before and what I've also mentioned, typical social innovation potential maker spaces would, for example, be repair cafes that have actually most of these elements that we said in there. And they're already widely spread now, at least here in Europe. The critical making resources, I think, also have a lot of potential to contribute to social innovation practices with our critical reflection on how things are made. So we have, again, a lot of elements there in terms of, the integrating the local knowledge, building for the community, sharing how we make. We have the learning element, we have the empowerment element, making things that make sense, be careful with the resources that you use. And so I think the nice example also of the great potential in maker communities for social innovation. And another one of my still all-time favorite projects is Careables, which we're just also, again, that's still going on and getting more, actually more follow-up now again, where we built this platform on open healthcare and where people would co-design solutions for needs that have not been addressed so far or not appropriately addressed, and then share those co-designs and replicate and make them accessible. So we did some studies actually also in terms of the innovation potential for Careables, and I think it's a really nice example of social innovation. Powered by the maker communities. And during COVID times, we also then even analyzed the reactions of the maker communities across some of our network partners, where we saw from a social innovation perspective, and we saw again these elements, that are crucial, that have been taken up or were highlighted during the process, that it was a very responsive process, a flexible process, responsible also in terms of resources, and still it was limited in terms of the scaling. So that's where we had a look at, we were actually asking makerspaces who were contributing to produce, for example, these equipment for hospitals in how far where would they scale, where would they put them on a micro, meso, or macro level. And there we saw the scaling was, for example, still an issue for them. So what we looked into the conditions. So you would need strong local and global networks and stakeholders. You would need to embed the local communities and train them. You would have to have the ethics in place and also have, guidelines and legal structures, because as soon as you get into the healthcare, legal aspects are super important. And you have to have this collaboration, probably also, these public-private partnerships or collaborations with the public sector and the private sector. And there is a nice publication on our findings on this as well, if you want to read into it. So just to summarize up again, this is what I talked about. There are, on the one hand, the core components of social innovation, and then there are those that are often common in our in social innovation. And I think from working now for quite a few years now with global maker communities, there is really a lot of great potential for social innovation and for different types also of social innovation within these communities. And with that, I would already like to finish the talk here, and happy to still take questions if we have time. Otherwise, yes, just let me know what you think about it, and hopefully I've given you some